This episode is a French to English translation of our original podcast. We've done our best to adapt cultural references, but you may notice the occasional unusual phrasing or wordplay, which may not land quite the same. Thanks for your understanding. Welcome to In the Eye of Cyber, the podcast that gives voice to digital players. I'm Anne-Laure de la Rivière, Communications Director at Gatewatcher. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming Antoine Trillard, Chief Information Officer of the City of Chelles and President of CoTer Numérique, a collective committed to using digital technologies as a lever for territorial transformation. People often think cybersecurity is just for the state or large corporations. But in reality, the real fight often happens elsewhere. In town halls, social centres, technical services, places that manage essential everyday information quietly. Today, local governments are at the heart of the digital ecosystem. They handle data flows, operate smart sensors, host sensitive information, and naturally that creates risk. In this episode, we'll be talking about digital transformation in local communities, the rise of new threats, artificial intelligence, and what all this means for the future of our cities in the era of smart territories. You can find all our episodes in the podcast section of our website. If you like what we do, don't forget to subscribe to In the Eye of Cyber so you don't miss the next episode. Hi Antoine, thank you for joining me today. The next theme of CoTer Numérique is quite telling. Data and AI at the core of our sustainable territory. Perfect timing. That's exactly what we're going to dive into today. But before we get into the key cybersecurity issues facing local governments, I like to start by going back over my guest's background. You started in the private sector as a network engineer at Butt. Then in 2006, you made a shift to public service, joining the City of Chelles as Telecom and Infrastructure Manager. You later moved to Noisy-le-Sec as CIO, before returning to Chelles in 2014 to lead IT for both the city and the Paris-Vallée de la Marne urban area. What made you leave the private sector for public service? And in your view, is there a different approach to network and cybersecurity issues in the public sphere?
It actually happened by chance. I'd been at Butt for 3 years, and I saw a job posting from the City of Chelles in the town's magazine. The position looked interesting. It combined both network and infrastructure responsibilities. I was still early in my career and felt it was important to move on rather than stay put, so I applied. Later on, I realised that working in the public sector is a different experience. You're building solutions that serve citizens directly in their daily lives. We often say we cover everything, from daycare apps to cemetery management systems. So yes, I really enjoy working in local government, especially on the IT side.
Since 2021, you've been president of CoTer Numérique, an association that brings together CIOs, IT directors, technical leads, and cybersecurity officers from local authorities. Your goal is to pool experience, defend common interests, and explore new innovations to benefit local communities. Is that right?
Exactly. CoTer Numérique is a non-profit that's been around for 35 years. This year, we're holding our 34th annual conference in Clermont-Ferrand. We organise events and knowledge sharing throughout the year with feedback from cities and municipalities. But the main event is the conference itself, where we bring together the whole IT ecosystem of local authorities. From cities of all sizes. It's a space to exchange, to hear what others have tried, and sometimes avoid testing solutions ourselves because we've already heard what works from our peers. This year, the hot topic is AI. It's on everyone's lips, and it's a huge challenge for cities, vendors, and the whole digital sector.
Besides AI, what are your other key focus areas at CoTer Numérique?
We're always focused on supporting day-to-day operations, helping departments and functional teams. And of course, cybersecurity remains a major concern and has been growing for the past few years. We're also seeing a shift. IT departments are becoming digital departments, with new responsibilities like managing smart city infrastructure, connected devices, IP everywhere. It's expanding our scope, and that brings challenges around data, governance, and interoperability.
You represent both large cities and small towns, tech directors and cyber experts. Do you all agree on the direction to take? Or do you sometimes have to reconcile very different visions?
Immunes. We're an association, so each member keeps their autonomy. But in every local authority, strategic choices are mostly made by the elected officials. Our role is to implement them and share best practices with each other. Larger cities with bigger budgets are often ahead of the curve on certain projects. Their feedback is really helpful for smaller towns like Chelles. We have around 55,000 residents, or even smaller ones with just 10 or 15,000.
It's very much a win-win situation. There's a saying, there are two kinds of organisations, those that have been cyber-attacked and those that don't know it yet. In an increasingly connected world, local governments are right in the crosshairs, sometimes without even realising it. When a mayor has, 3,000 issues on their desk, has cybersecurity really become as much a priority as roads, waste, or local safety? Or does the invisibility of digital investment still hold back cybersecurity progress?
Over the past 5 years, we've seen a real shift. Many local governments, including ours back in 2019, have been attacked. Unlike private companies, cities tend to be more transparent. We talk about incidents publicly, which helps raise awareness. There are strong networks among CIOs, but also among elected officials. And that's helped spread the message. Today, whether a city has experienced an attack or not, cybersecurity is a key concern. Elected officials understand what's at stake, protecting sensitive data and preserving the image and trust of the local government.
When we think of cyber attacks, we often imagine ransomware, criminal gangs demanding crypto payments. That's the most visible and publicised threat. But is it really the most common one in local governments? From your experience, are there other types of attacks? Less flashy, but just as impactful?
Definitely. In 2024, we've seen more DDoS attacks, denial of service on public websites. These weren't as common before. We used to see more ransomware-type incidents. But now, some attackers just aim to bring down websites. For a few hours or even a full day, there are two ways to interpret this. One, it's a good sign. Our systems are more secure, so attackers go after what's still reachable. Two, it might be linked to 2024 being a high-profile year. With the Olympic Games, maybe cities were more actively targeted.
I see.
We've also seen more stealthy intrusions. Attackers get in early, move laterally, establish footholds, and then launch the real attack at a critical time.
And do you face destabilisation actions, sabotage of archives, long-term infiltrations, or even intrusions whose purpose we don't yet know? I'm thinking particularly of the current context of growing geopolitical instability. Since 2022, we've had the war in Ukraine. There are tensions in the Middle East. There have been major elections in the United States. Do you perceive a shift in the motivations or in the signature of attacks? And are there certain weak signals that worry you more today than a few years ago?
What's certain is that today, attacks are prepared. We're really starting to see people taking control inside our information systems, moving through different layers, probing different places. And then, at a key moment, the payload gets launched. We've seen this time and again in feedback from local authorities. The work is done well in advance, and that's exactly why we need to have better visibility. Not just basic security, not just EDR or DR, which, of course, are important, but they do have limits. They only show us what we already know we're protecting, and if there's human error or something gets overlooked. If one machine falls through the cracks, maybe because of an operational constraint or a tricky application, it could be left unprotected. Now, I'm a strong advocate for strict discipline on updates, antivirus, everything on workstations and servers. That has to remain the priority, even before functionality. But sometimes exceptions are made, and that's exactly where we need to be more vigilant. That's why looking at the network with a detection solution, something that sees what we might not catch through our usual dashboards, is becoming essential.
Like NDR.
Haha, yes, like NDR.
So, I had received a friend who's currently a deputy and was formerly the first deputy mayor of Vannes. He told us on this podcast, back in 2022, that their city hall was facing, on average, about 10 cyber attacks per week. I imagine that's evolved since then over the past few years. Of course, the intensity of those attacks varied, but there was a clear regularity. And when you hear a figure like that, you realise just how constant, how permanent the threat really is. It almost feels normalised. Is that your sense as well, day to day? Because the way we talk about cyber attacks, it's often around big, one-off, spectacular events. But in reality, isn't it more like a steady stream of smaller, constant threats all the time? So yes, you would say you're regularly under attack either way.
So, every day, every week, even every hour, because these are bots we're talking about. Automated systems that constantly scan for vulnerabilities. Targeting local authorities, sure, but also SMEs, and, really, any website they can find. They look for flaws, and when they find one, it often gets correlated with other data and sold on the dark web. What we're saying today is that most of the time, when a local authority is hit, the real attack happened much earlier. Weeks, sometimes months in advance. And from what we've seen and heard through feedback from other local governments, it all starts with bots. These automated probes find a weakness, and that access can be sold. Sometimes it's sold up to 17 times before someone decides to actually exploit it. So yes, we're under constant attack, but these aren't always high-speed Hollywood-style attacks. They're slow. They take time, they evolve, and that's why the goal isn't just to stop the first intruder, but to make sure that if someone gets through, the second one gets stopped. It's all about layers of security, visibility. That's where NDR plays a critical role. It gives us a broader view of what's happening in the background. One of my colleagues says this a lot, and I love the image. In cybersecurity, we've got the belt, we've got the suspenders, but it's that invisible elastic waistband, the one you don't see, that actually alerts you when something's off. The things that slip through our usual tools, strange flows, odd signals, those little anomalies we wouldn't otherwise catch. For years we've heard that line. It's not a question of if we'll be attacked, but when. Honestly, we don't even hear it that much anymore, because we know we're being attacked constantly. So the real issue now is making sure our defences are set at the right level, that these bots, or whoever's behind them, can't get in, can't take control, and can't do real damage.
So we've seen quite a few new regulations recently, notably the NIS2 directive, which strengthens the obligations for public entities considered essential or important. Do you see this as a real driver for advancing the cyber maturity of local territories? Or do you worry that it might instead add to the regulatory overload on local authorities, many of whom are already close to being overwhelmed?
Yes, regulatory asphyxiation, and often financial strain too. But overall, I think the NIS2 directive is a good thing. What it really pushes for is bringing local authorities and companies up to a solid state-of-the-art level in cybersecurity. There's ISO 27001, which sets many of the pillars we need to follow. Of course, putting everything in place isn't easy, especially with limited resources. But I'm counting on ANSSI. They're working on it. They've already set up a portal to support us, and help us understand the specific challenges local authorities face. Much of it boils down to updating systems, procedures, and so on. For smaller local authorities, that can be tough, especially when it comes to managing subcontractors. So far, I find NSSI's support very structured and responsive, especially with the recovery plan. It's tailored to the needs and scope of each entity. I hope, along with the DSI, we'll keep getting that close support. As for penalties, apparently there won't be financial sanctions for local authorities. Is that good or bad? I'm not sure, but the key point is that local authorities must secure themselves, and many, at least the ones of our size or bigger, are doing just that. The real challenge remains with the smaller ones, and that's not something NIS2 will fully address. I believe the state also has a role in supporting these small local authorities.
I understand you mentioned ANSSI earlier. In their 2025 report on threats to local authorities, it's noted that departments have been hit by more cyber attacks than regions. 44 incidents versus 29. That might suggest attackers follow some kind of hierarchy, going after the weakest targets first. But is that really the case? Do attackers assume departments are less well protected and thus easier to breach? Or is it the type of information departments hold, often very close to citizens' daily lives, that makes them more attractive? Or could it reflect something about the attackers themselves? Perhaps their technical capabilities limit them to targeting smaller, less robust infrastructures rather than the more fortified regional systems.
So, like I mentioned earlier, since these attacks are mostly automated, carried out by bots, I don't think attackers specifically target one local authority over another. Regarding the numbers, well, there are simply more departments than regions, right? So it makes sense that more incidents are reported at that level. But then, does everyone fully play the game when it comes to disclosing incidents? In 2025, many of those incidents reported by large local authorities were relatively minor anyway. And even though departments are, for me, large entities with substantial resources, they're doing what they need to do to keep their tools secure. The real challenge is with the smaller local authorities. That's where there's still significant effort needed today, especially at the level of
awareness raising and the cost for decision makers.
Yes, or resources really, because often we're asking a city of 5,000 or 10,000 people to meet the same cybersecurity expectations as one with 50,000 or 100,000, but with far fewer means, and yet they still have to manage IT, provide cyber training, all of that. There are some good practices. In some areas, we're seeing shared service providers or regional cooperatives that pool resources. That's definitely a path forward. I think we really need to support these smaller local authorities because they often just don't have the same level of expertise in-house. Even in a city like Chelles with 55,000 residents, I consider myself lucky. I've got a highly competent person handling cybersecurity and networks, but I know that's not the case everywhere. Recruitment in local government is already difficult, and finding specialised cyber profiles, that's even harder. So if we're feeling the strain at 55,000, imagine what it's like for smaller towns. Their IT department might be 2 or 3 people, 1 technician, a manager, and they're expected to run an entire information system, often with dozens or even 100 different software applications. They're facing the same challenges as a large city, with just a fraction of the resources. So yes, I believe we need to rethink how we support them through shared tools, mutualised resources, and dedicated cyber support. And I know some territories are already moving in that direction through inter-municipal unions or shared providers. Cybersecurity absolutely needs to be part of those shared services.
You mentioned earlier that the city of Chelles was attacked in 2019. Can you tell us how you discovered it? Was it a clear signal or a chain of small failures?
Yes, absolutely. Looking back, It was actually a turning point for us. In 2019, the kind of attacks we saw were more instantaneous. There'd be a vulnerability, and boom, the payload was deployed almost immediately. That's what happened to us. It was a Friday, around 1:30, maybe 2 p.m. We were having lunch, and suddenly our software services just stopped working. One of them was running on a remote desktop solution, so back at the office, we took control of the server remotely and saw our admin accounts had been blocked. So we made a decision, quickly. This was before the big Angers attack, by the way. Before it was widely known how critical these things could get. We shut down the server. We started assessing the impact, saw that 5 servers were affected, and that a file named Deadline had been encrypted on our office server. So we didn't overthink it. We informed general management right away, said, "Look, we've had an attack, some services are down." Then we began restoring from backups, machines from the previous day, and made sure to update that remote desktop server right away. But, and this was our biggest mistake, we overwrote everything too fast. We lost the forensic trail. We couldn't figure out exactly how they got in or by what method. We knew the entry point, but not the full sequence. From there, we gradually restored 10,000 files. It took a few days, but within 12 hours, the 5 servers were back up and running. By the end of the afternoon, things were more or less back to normal. Still, that incident was a wake-up call. I come from a network security background, but even I had let some things slide. Patching, updates, antivirus coverage. Were our workstations properly protected? Were all our servers up to date? That attack forced us to go back to basics. It also made us step up. We targeted awareness efforts at our elected officials, invested in new security tools, and thanks to the 2020 recovery plan with ANSSI, we added extra protection layers. In the end, it was a blessing in disguise. It forced us to realise cybersecurity isn't optional. That attack may have been fast and unsophisticated, but it shook us. And had it been a more advanced intrusion, like one targeting Active Directory or backups, it could have been far worse. So yes, 2019 was a pivotal year for us. It made us take security seriously, and by 2020, it had become a true priority.
Yes, totally. And you did lose some data, but you were able to recover most of it, right? And the attack only interrupted services for a few hours.
Yes. Our citizen portal and front desk services were down for a few hours, maybe half a day total. We acted quickly. We shut everything down, identified the impacted servers, restored from backup, and rebuilt them. We were lucky the attack wasn't more advanced.
So in a way, your luck was being hit by a fairly simple attack, which didn't cause you a complete shutdown in 2009.
Yes, because from 2020, we saw much more sophisticated attacks.
And did you pay the ransom?
No, haha, we didn't hesitate, didn't pay any ransom.
And just a reminder, you should never pay a ransom anyway. You also didn't have the budget for it.
To be honest, and as far as I know, no local government has ever actually paid one.
What about the human side of things? When something like this happens, is it shock, denial, panic, or just all hands on deck?
Back in 2019, there weren't many examples to follow. The Angers incident hadn't happened yet. Most cities hadn't faced major attacks. So for us, it wasn't full panic. It was more like, okay, we've got a problem, let's fix it. But I've since spoken to colleagues in cities that suffered much more complex attacks. Total shutdowns, wiped backups, months of recovery. In those cases, there's also this psychological toll. What did I miss? What did I do wrong? It's much harder to bounce back from that. When a local authority gets attacked, what we usually see is real teamwork. Everyone rolls up their sleeves, does what it takes to restore services as fast as possible, no matter the hours. There's often this commando mode, a strong sense of solidarity.
If you had one piece of advice for a small town CIO who's never faced a cyber crisis, What would it be?
Cybersecurity needs to be a priority, and for smaller municipalities, the key is to get proper support. Make sure your data is protected, and especially that your backups are secure, not accessible via the internet. An immutable backup is your best insurance policy. That's what allows you to bounce back.
You mentioned artificial intelligence earlier as a major topic for CoTer Numérique. Right now, AI is everywhere. In political speeches, in innovation plans. It's being framed as the next big territorial revolution. Yet, in many municipalities, data management is still fragmented or undervalued. We had Philippe Latombe on the podcast, a member of parliament deeply engaged in digital issues, and he raised a very specific concern. He's not afraid of data leaks or illegal resale. He's afraid of legal data cross-referencing, for example, health records combined with demographic data, to create highly targeted business models. He mentioned Alphabet, Google's parent company, which already owns an insurance company and could use AI to predict individual health risks with extreme accuracy. So, from your perspective as a public sector tech leader, is that something you're worried about? And do you think current legal and technical frameworks are strong enough to prevent that kind of drift?
I do think there will be abuses, especially when there's business involved. But on the public side, that's not what we're here for. We're focused on public service, not profits. So I don't think those risks originate from local governments. That said, AI could easily be used to analyse court rulings, for example, and predict outcomes of future cases, or even recommend a more favourable tribunal. That kind of use is already plausible. So yes, we have to stay vigilant. For us, AI should be a modernisation tool to support staff, automate simple tasks, help citizens get answers more quickly. It's another revolution, just like what we saw in the 2000s with digital transformation and paperless services. We're now seeing real AI projects emerge across municipalities. And the very first thing to do is train people. Build AI awareness among public employees. A lot of cities have already started that.
Right. A 2025 study from the Data Publica Observatory found that 1 in 2 municipalities has already launched an AI-related project or plans to do so in the next 12 months. That's a big leap. In 2022, it was only 1 in 5. So clearly there's growing enthusiasm, partly hype, but also real expectations about improving public services. Is this a trend you support? Do those figures match what you see on the ground? And if so, what kinds of AI projects are you working on?
Honestly, I'd say we're beyond 50%. I think almost every municipality is experimenting now. The big shift happened in late 2022, when ChatGPT came out. That really changed the game. At our annual Congress, we already had a session dedicated to AI. We saw that 97 to 99% of students were using AI tools. Many were paying for pro subscriptions. €30 a month. And for a student with limited means, that says a lot. It shows the tool is genuinely useful. For us, the first practical application was a chatbot. Before, we had a scripted assistant, like an Excel sheet of questions and canned answers. But it was clunky. The second someone went off script, it broke. With AI, we built a new assistant in just 2 months. It scans our public website and gives coherent, relevant answers. Maybe not ultra-detailed, but very usable. It actually helps people. The second area we're working on is training. We recently acquired a tool designed specifically to help with the drafting of council decisions. It's made by former public servants, so it's well adapted to our realities. Very useful. We're also cautious about how AI handles data. Some tools feed on everything you upload and make it public. So cities need to set boundaries and recommend safe, approved tools for staff use.
Are there situations where you think AI isn't a good idea? Cases where it could be more of a risk than an advantage?
Like with any revolution, there will be failures. Some tools we thought would be game changers won't work out. Others we didn't even think of will turn out to be incredibly useful. One big area is writing assistance. That's already proving valuable. And there's a lot of talk around public procurement. AI can help draft calls for bids, analyse responses, even evaluate offers. But of course, there will always need to be a human layer, especially for decision-making and final validation. There are also environmental concerns. AI is power-hungry. We need to adopt responsible digital strategies. But I believe we'll soon see more energy-efficient AI models, ones that can compete without draining resources. We're only at the very beginning of what AI can do.
AI runs on data, and when we talk about municipalities, data governance becomes a huge topic. The Data Publica Barometer also shows that citizens trust local governments more than the national government when it comes to personal data. 2/3 of respondents said they trust their town hall, just behind healthcare professionals, while only 49% trust the national government. Why do you think that is? Is it just a proximity effect? The fact that local officials feel more human? Or does it reflect a deeper, more responsible approach to data?
It's a mix of things. First, yes. Local governments often deal with less sensitive data than national agencies or hospitals. We're mostly handling civil records, school services. The departments might manage some health data, but at the city level, it's more basic. What we do have is lots of software, which means lots of internal data flows. So even if the content isn't ultra-sensitive, the volume is still large. The GDPR applies to everyone, and frankly, I think it could have been made a bit more flexible for municipalities. But the real risk isn't misuse, it's cyberattacks. We're not trying to monetize our data. That's not our role. And because we're close to the people we serve, we're naturally more trusted.
Our CTI team recently published a piece about the rise of AI-enhanced phishing. Attacks that are more convincing, more personalised, and much harder to detect. There was even a real case where a multinational lost $25 million because of a deepfake video call, with cloned voice and image of a company CFO. Are local governments already worried about this kind of thing? Have you seen signs of it? Or is it still considered science fiction in your world?
That case, I think it was a Chinese company, is very real. So no, it's not science fiction anymore. If it's been done once, it can be done again. Now, could that happen to a municipality? Probably less likely. We're more local. Decisions are made in person, not over Zoom. So there are fewer points of entry for that kind of scam. Still, it's scary. There are already French solutions that raise awareness and help secure against these kinds of attacks. It's one of the darker sides of what AI can do.
We've also heard a lot about smart cities in recent years. Some cities, Dijon, Lyon, Nice, have really tried to become innovation showcases. Lyon redesigned entire neighbourhoods around connectivity. Dijon centralised its public space management under one command centre. Nice rolled out algorithmic video surveillance in a cutting-edge monitoring hub. Do you see those as inspiring models for mid-sized cities like yours? Or do you worry about a tech divide, where only a few cities move forward and the rest are left behind?
I don't see it as a divide. Here in Chelles, we're 55,000 residents. We launched a Smart City Master Plan 2 years ago. We wanted to move beyond isolated use cases. No more working in silos. Instead, we now have a global strategy with 5 key pillars: buildings, roads, public safety, administrative modernisation, and a social inclusion axis. Take Dijon, for example. I've visited their setup. They were dealing with multiple maintenance providers, and their goal was to centralise and streamline, and save money. It wasn't just about tech. It was about efficiency. Sure, cities like Dijon or Lyon get the spotlight, but many others are quietly advancing, especially in video surveillance, where AI has been used for years now. Those big cities are like a driving force, a showcase. but they don't create a gap. They help move everyone forward.
Let's finish with a word about labels. Since 2022, we've seen initiatives like the Cyberdynamic Municipality label, backed by the National Gendarmerie, cybermalveillance.gouv.fr, the CNIL and the AMF. It's kind of like the Flowering Towns and Villages label, but for cybersecurity. The goal is to reward municipalities that are actively building a structured cyber approach, and also to strengthen their image with residents and partners. What's your view on this? Do you think labels like this bring real value to cities?
Labels are a political choice, really. There are tons of them across every area of public service. The most famous is definitely the Flowering Villages one, which has a strong impact on local image and tourism. As for cyber labels, there's probably less political will to make them visible. A lot of cities prefer to stay low-key, discreet, humble about their cybersecurity efforts. But that doesn't mean the label isn't useful if it helps promote good practices, recognise team efforts, and reassure citizens. I'm all for it.
Thank you so much, Antoine, for playing along with all my questions. And thank you to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find more interviews on my LinkedIn, Anne-Laure de la Rivière. Feel free to follow us on your favourite platform, and don't forget to share and comment. See you soon in the Eye of Cyber.